Hello, this is Shay Smith, and this is my case study for Truman Elementary. What do we know about Truman Elementary? We know that the reading assessment scores are consistently lower than the math assessment scores. With this, the student cohorts are losing ground on year-to-year reading assessments as they travel from grade to grade, and we will see some data on that later. We also know that there are grant programs to financially help supporting fixing reading issues in a school building. What do we need to know? We need to know how much time is being spent on reading in the classroom throughout the day. Since there is a discrepancy in reading assessment scores and math assessment scores, we want to look at the time spent on reading throughout the day and see if it's enough. We also need to know, are students being taught at their ability level? Is there any kind of differentiated instruction happening in the classroom? And are teachers teaching to state standards? In identifying the problem of why the reading assessments are not lining up with the math assessments, I went in and looked and observed my teachers teaching in their classrooms, and I also had the reading specialists go and observe them to see what kind of reading strategies were being used, see if we can identify the problem with these reading assessments. We found out that there was 1 hour or less a day of reading time in most classrooms. There was being very little differentiated instruction, so low students weren't getting the help that they needed, and high students were kind of bored because they already knew what was happening. There were also very little strategic reading strategies happening, and there was very little reading skill development, so no spelling or learning how to sound out words outside of just reading the text that is being presented. My proposed plan is to train teachers in research-based reading strategies and then have them implement that. In order to implement this plan, I plan to apply for a state grant. The reason I want to apply for this is because the grant, if the school is awarded the grant, the school will get $200,000 to $250,000 in order to implement new reading strategies. What I found out and what the reading assessment or the reading specialist found out going in to classrooms and watching teachers teach is that they didn't seem to know how to differentiate instruction or what kind of research-based reading strategies were working well and how that they could change their teaching strategies. So what I want to do is apply for the grant in order to get some funding, and then I want to provide a school-wide professional development on research-based reading strategies. This way my teachers will know what the new practices are, and then they can be taught on how to use those practices and then go back and put them into their classroom. The reason I want to do a school-wide professional development is because most teachers didn't seem to have this knowledge of different kind of teaching strategies, and I think it would be good if all teachers in the school learned the same kind of reading strategies so it can be consistent from classroom to classroom as kids move from grade to grade. I would like to see these strategies implemented toward the beginning of the year, which is why I want the first professional development to be in one of the in-services before back to school. I would also like to keep parents informed, since parents came to me with the concern of they didn't think that their children were learning to read very well. So I'd like to send home information on how the students will be learning and what strategies will be put in place, and then also give them something that they can help their students with at home to improve their reading. So that way the students are working on their reading skills not just in the classroom, but also at home. I would then like to meet monthly with my staff so that way they can talk with each other and talk with me and talk about how these new strategies are working, if they need to make changes, if they're not working. They can talk with each other and figure out what's working in some classes, what's not working in other classes, and make changes that way. I also, with this, want to keep parents informed throughout the progress, so we will be sending home progress reports for the students along the way. And then a good way to see if this is working well is to look at the state assessment scores at the end of the year and see if there have been any improvements. we can make changes and keep best practices. Why is changing this reading strategy that is happening in the school right now going to be best for students? Right now, we can see that the students are not retaining a lot of their reading strategies. So if we look here, from 3 years ago, say first graders scored a median of 55%. 2 years ago, they came down to 52, and last year's 51. So as we can see, as a general trend, most of the classes are losing reading strategies as they continue to move from grade to grade, and we want to keep their retention, partly because they're going to build on those as they go from grade to grade, and also because we want them to do well in each grade. This is also going to be better for students because we want to include some sort of different instruction for students, so that way each student is being helped where they are, and this would be the teachers will learn how to do this well in professional development. This is also good for the students because they can practice skills such as spelling and sounding out words other than just trying to read, but do spelling separately, sounding out words, and then putting it all together in a reading context. We also think that this is really good for students because reading is not just a skill that kids need in school, but they are going to need it for their whole lives, and we want them to learn it well as they're in school. When I was making these decisions, there were a few things I was thinking about. One, parents have the right to know why their students are not performing on level, and as the parents came to me and were asking what was happening with their students in the classrooms, I wanted to figure that out and let them know. Students should be receiving the best education possible, and looking at the scores and then looking at how the teachers were teaching, this just wasn't happening, so we needed to come up with a plan to make sure that students get the best education that they can. As I went in and looked at teachers, I was thinking about, where are my teachers missing instruction? Are they missing instruction because they're not qualified or because they don't know how to do these reading strategies? And how can I help them become more qualified in order to teach students to the best of their ability? I was also thinking about, how can we help students develop a skill that they're going to need throughout their lives and not just to perform on a test. Yes, we do want them to do better on their testing, but we also want them to know how to read because they will need that skill for the rest of their lives. There are still some issues that might be unresolved, and we can look at this as the school year progresses, but when will the professional development occur? For my teachers, I do want there to be a in-service day at the beginning of the year, but also a few scattered throughout, and we will just have to see how that fits into our schedule. How much have the students missed so far, and how do we go about catching them back up to grade level? We will have to talk as a staff about how we are going to do that. We are also going to have to look at what will the change in instructional time in each individual classroom look like. If we are only spending 1 hour less a day on reading, we're going to have to change some instructional time and figure out where we can implement that. How was I being an agent for continuous improvement? Parents were concerned with students' reading, so I and the reading specialist made classroom visits to assess teaching practices. I looked into and applied for a grant to help fund professional development for teachers to improve their teaching of reading and reading strategies, and I kept parents informed about the progress along the way and gave them tools to help their students improve at home and not just improve in the classroom. As we know, reading needs a lot of practice, not just at school but also at home. I responded to concerns. I listened to parents' concerns. I analyzed some of the state data to see where we were falling short. I researched classroom instruction practices and realized that my teachers were not teaching with research-based strategies, and so I went and found some professional development for them in order to help them learn how to do those and implement those. Formulated a plan to equip teachers and followed through on those implementations and kept parents informed of the progress along the way. I also used grants for positive change. I researched ways to help cover the financial costs because our district doesn't have a lot of extra finances to do that. And so I researched, found a grant that could help us to pay for some new curriculum, pay for some professional development, and figure out how to implement that into our building. And I also set aside time throughout the school year for teachers to learn about the new strategies because if they don't know, they're not going to be able to implement them. We discussed implementing with other colleagues throughout the year what was working, what wasn't working, and then determine if we need to, if the new strategies were working, how to continue keeping those in our classrooms. I also help parents in helping their students. I was listening to parent concerns. They're very concerned that their students weren't learning how to read, and I'm very concerned that they weren't as well. I also inform parents on how they could help bolster student reading at home and help that learning process there so it is continuously happening. It's not just at school, but it's also at home. It's also made parents aware of the progress that their students are making. I am excited to see the changes that my school has, and I hope that we can see some improved test scores, but also we can see some improvement in kids' reading skills and hopefully make them lifelong readers so that way they can continue to learn even after they get out of school.